Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Criminal Justice Corner. Today, we have a really special episode. It's a case that's been in the news recently, but it's not a new case. It is an older case. It's about Gypsy Rose. I'm not sure if anyone has heard of her, but we're going to talk about Gypsy Rose today. And today with me, I have a very special guest, Miss Catherine. Catherine is an IO psychologist and a Lean Six Sigma Green Belt. Catherine McNeil is a BBA, MA, aka ASC Catherine on social media. She is the principal consultant of CHBM Services LLC. She is also has a holistic career. She is an employee and a workforce development consultant, and she is the executive director of Disruptive Inc. Wow, she is powerful. So I want to first say thank you for joining us today, Catherine.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
I'm excited to have you here. I know we're going to have like a super dynamic conversation about this case. So just thank you. And I can't wait to hear your opinion about this case. So let's dive in. So as we already know, Gypsy Rose is a young lady now. And her and her boyfriend plotted to kill her mother. But they didn't just maliciously plot to kill her mother for no reason, in their opinion. Her mother, since birth, had been poisoning her with ideas in her head to make her think and make others around her think that she was ill when she wasn't. Her mother made her play along with the notion that she could not walk. So for a lot of her life, I want to say almost all of her life until she went to jail, she was confined to a wheelchair, even though she could walk. She had no ailments that prevented her from walking. Her mother would give her medicine when she did not need medicine. Her mother would take her to doctors who would give her medications when she didn't need medications. Her mother made the doctors give her surgeries when she didn't need surgeries. Her mother was just doing a bunch of nefarious things to her daughter just to get attention. Her mother would tell charities that she needed money and try to raise money for Gypsy Rose when they technically were not. So Gypsy Rose was not suffering from anything, so she didn't need the monies that this illness warranted. So, Catherine, what is your opinion about what the mother was doing to Gypsy at such a young age, the Munchausen by proxy?
So there's a lot to unpack here. I mean, when I kind of read up on this case to catch up to make sure that I had a full understanding, the first thing I thought about as a parent, I can't imagine putting my child in that type of environment and or predicament. And I can't imagine a scenario where I would feel like I needed to literally create this
world.
Yeah, like this whole environment where my child is solely reliant upon me. I'm lying to literally everyone. And I believe that it said that when any of the doctors or neighbors or anyone started to question, she would literally like pack up and move someone else, like or move somewhere else. So there's a lot of thoughts that's associated with this, right? There's a lot of instability. There's mental illness.
Absolutely.
There's
but on the part of the mom,
right?
Mental,
yes. On the part of the mother, there's a codependency there. Definitely. And then of course more in my lane from the workplace, like this is genius level, but it's lazy at the same time because she's living off of an income, that's being like curated by way of fabricated stories, lies, pity, and taking advantage of the system. So it's a lot to unpack.
Definitely. And what really stood out to me, because now we know current day, because that was many years ago, this was during Gypsy growing up. We know current day Gypsy is out of jail now, out of prison, I should say. She's out of prison now. We know that there were a lot of adults in Gypsy's life, family members in particular, because Gypsy has a dad. There were a lot of family members, adults, who saw this going on and they did not step in to help her.
Mm.
For me, that was quite disturbing.
Well, I mean, ultimately, her entire community failed her.
Absolutely. The doctors,
Like
her
from
dad,
her
her
family,
family,
her immediate family on out into like all the way up into the doctors and the system itself. This was
everybody.
never investigated. There were never questions about why there was so much movement, and the doctors never talked to each other. And
Yeah.
and if I'm not mistaken, I believe that I read that even when the doctors, like, they would realize something was going on, but then they
And never
wouldn't
told
say
the authorities.
anything. Right.
Yeah.
Like they just kind of, so there was an entire community that had the opportunity to save this young lady
And
and to
didn't.
ultimately save her mother, right?
Yes. From herself.
But they didn't.
Yes. And they were saying that the mother would go to the doctors and she wouldn't have any past medical records.
Mm-hmm.
They would just take her word for whatever it was.
Which
I've
is,
never heard of such.
yeah, and especially not in the days of my chart, because literally,
Exactly. They're all connected. It's not, look, state to state, they're connected.
if I go anywhere, the first thing they're asking me to do is fill out a questionnaire, and the first thing I'm asking is, you can't just pull it down from my chart because I don't want to do this
Exactly.
again.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking about my ability to be able to walk in somewhere and just tell them that this is what's wrong with my child
And
and to
not
receive treatment.
and receive treatment. And let's just say this, she was not reporting the common cold.
Yeah.
She was reporting cancer.
Yeah.
She shaved Gypsy's head and was reporting cancer. And they were like, okay, she got cancer. Let me give
Not a
her
blood test run, nothing.
nothing. And they also went to an extreme. She told them she's not eating. So they installed surgically a feeding tube into Gypsy. No test, no, let's put her on a regime. Let's weigh her. Let's see if she's going to gain weight over the next 30 days. None of that. They just put a feeding tube in her. And her family was like, she had a good appetite. She ate all the time. That is, I don't even know what that is, beyond abuse. What is that?
Well, I mean, she was a genius.
A master manipulator.
Yeah. Like she put any of that skill set, right? She was creative. She was cunning. She was charming. She was convincing.
Very.
Right? She was resourceful. There's a lot of occupations that she would have been very successful in had she used her evil for good. Right?
Definitely.
So we won't take credit away from her, because you have to be a different level of genius to be able to have come up with and to have gotten away with what she got
For
away
so
with
long.
for so long. But on the other side of that, I have a lot of questions, because I just wonder about her background, how she was reared, like
Definitely.
her relationship with her parents and what that looked like.
Because we don't
Was
know.
right.
That was never revealed.
And truthfully, I would think that you would really have to hate or resent a child to go to those lengths and to put a child through that type of torture for that long.
Absolutely.
Period. I mean, as a whole, but then, for that long period of time.
And Gypsy did reveal that her mother would tell her that Gypsy was the reason that her father left them. She did reveal that. To whatever extent she believed that, she might have felt that way. So she felt like maybe in her mind, she felt this torturing was justified.
And that's very possible. Like that's one of the dangers that comes along with us as parents
Right.
having negative conversations about the other parent with
With our
children.
children.
Yeah,
Yes.
like we not only paint this picture that may or may not be just of the other parent, but
Mhm.
we also um help to kind of drudge up some misplaced feelings, right? Where the kids
Absolutely.
are kind of like, oh, well, if that's the case, well, had I not been born, maybe they would have still been together, right?
Right.
Or maybe my parent wouldn't have left, right? Or whatever the case may be. So I think that's a very real conversation. It's a lot of possibilities that can come out of that.
Now, do you think Gypsy's father had a duty to be more present in her life?
So there's a lot of gray space, right? So, the simple answer is all parents should be present and active in their children's lives. Bottom
Right.
line, hard stop, right?
Right.
Um, but I don't think we really know enough about this case to know the reason why he wasn't. Because maybe there was a sense of guilt and like abandoned responsibility that might have been there, depending on what happened as to why he left in the first place. Then you hear about this, but you're helpless. Or you feel like you're helpless. Because clearly these weren't, upper middle class individuals.
True, true. And we know he revealed that she, Gypsy's mom, did not need to ask for or take money or scam money from the charities or the churches that she was getting the money from. He said that he was giving her, if I'm not mistaken, a minimum of $1,000 per month. Minimum. Not saying that she could live off that. Please don't get me wrong, but he was saying that he was providing at least that minimum for her a month.
And then give or take, how she lived, whether or not she was getting support from the system and things along. I mean,
Exactly.
it's just a lot of gray area from that standpoint. But the short answer of whether or not he should have been involved is yes, because that's his child, right? So
Absolutely.
there should have been a pre-existing relationship that would have supported him helping to get her out of that situation.
Exactly. Now we know that the mother would, of course, say negative things about him and he did say they had a fractured relationship. I just for it to go on so long is all I can, I guess, hang my hat on. And I know that Gypsy revealed currently that she felt like she had nobody to talk to. And that is why she did what she did to the mother. Her and her then boyfriend did what they did because she felt so trapped. She felt like there was no way out. So, what do you feel like her mindset was during the plotting of this whole thing?
And that's something that I thought about, right? In an attempt to relate to this story, and not get sucked into it for real, because I don't want to relate apples to apples. But in an attempt to relate to this story, I kind of thought about that, right? There has to be a certain level of desperation that
Definitely.
exists, right? You discover and realize that you not only been lied to and manipulated, but you've been abused. And
Yes.
you start to think about what you've lost, the possibilities, what you can't do, right? Because if I'm not mistaken, she wasn't in school either. Like literally, she was removed from
Yeah.
every and anything that could have potentially helped her to no longer be a victim or to
Right.
raise her awareness, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of things, a lot of desperate states that kind of come to mind there. And I don't wanna say I understand how this ended up the way that it did,
Okay.
um, but I do understand how it ended up the way that it did, because as with any abuser, it comes to a point where it's either you or them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know that this is now, unfortunately, because it being premeditated, right,
It
changes that
was.
aspect of it.
It was.
But under normal circumstances, in a abusive relationship, it comes down to it's a them or me thing.
Now, do you think her prison sentence was justified? She did get 10 years. That was the, like the original sentence. Do you think for what she did, her and her then boyfriend, do you think that original prison sentence was justified? Considering she was tortured her whole life, she had all these unnecessary surgeries.
Look,
She saw no way
I'm
out.
sitting here like, am I supposed to be PC? Like, how am I supposed to answer this honestly? Because
It's no, I need an honest answer. I'm not asking for PC. I'm asking for an honest answer.
truth be told, again, where she messed up was it being premeditated. But her
It was
not
not a
having
good passion.
like her not having any external connections prior to the boyfriend, no one had the opportunity to talk her through this
That's
to
true.
help
She
her.
had nobody to rely on but him at that time.
Right.
And
So,
that's thanks to the mom.
I would think law is not my thing. I am an industrial and organizational psychologist. I stay in my lane. But as a parent and as someone's child, right, and somebody with a fractured relationship with one of my parents, it's nothing. I don't, outside of harming one of my kids, I don't know that it's anything that one of my parents could do that would ever make me physically harm them, right?
Okay.
Um, but then you add all of this. You've been torturing me my entire life,
Years upon years
right?
upon years.
This is a episode of Snap, but like maternal version, right? Like
Yeah.
it's just I get it, but I don't. I
Right.
really do think that the only reason why her sentence was what it was because it was premeditated. Had she been in transition from a surgery or fighting her mom to like not have to take a medicine or go here anymore or whatever the case may be, I think that would have looked very differently, and she probably would have done time in the psych ward and they would have let her out.
And she was not the one who actually killed the mom.
Yeah,
She plotted.
because he got life, right? Didn't he get a life sentence?
Right, yes. But she did, plot it. She did do a video for him so he would know exactly where to go in the house. She did all that. She was
Yeah,
an integral part of the planning.
so she
But
got
when
10 years for being the mastermind.
she did, she did, she did. But when he came in the house, she went into another room and, it was hands off for her at that point. But leading up to it, she was hands on.
And that's probably the differentiator for the that was probably the differentiator for the jury. Yeah,
Right.
she designed it, but
He carried it out.
yeah, like she actually didn't do anything, right?
Yes.
She also
Now
didn't intercede to stop it, but
she didn't,
yeah.
because she did say her mom when he was in the process of taking her life, she did say her mom cried out for her.
Now
She
that's
did
a
say
lot of
that.
nerve, but
She
okay.
did say that. I know.
Yeah, that's
Now moving it forward to present day, Gypsy did do like a mini docu series, and she revealed that while she's been in prison, she's been dating. She said being in prison for her is the most freedom she's had in her whole life.
which is crazy in and of itself, but I ironically understand considering how she grew up, so that makes sense.
That's what she said. So she's been dating. I'm assuming she didn't say this specifically, but I'm assuming making friends with the inmates. I'm assuming, but she was very fixated on dating. So she's had several boyfriends in prison, and to the point where she was able to get a fiance, two different ones, I believe. And her last fiance actually turned into her husband. So what do you think about that?
The first thing that comes to mind is there's literally someone for everyone. So for those who are listening who may have been going through a rough patch
Yeah.
and or are having some second thoughts and doubts about if you're good enough to find the love of your life, this is an
Even killers.
excellent
Even
commercial.
killers get married.
Yeah, like I mean, you just got to put yourself out there. So there's
That is
the
it.
takeaway for everybody, right? She did the work and now she's living her happily ever after.
So
I
yeah.
have nothing to say outside of that. I have a lot of questions. But the flip side of that though is when we think about um let's just use some of the serial killers that have gone on to infamy because of their deeds. One
100%.
thing that you hear about in every last one of those scenarios is the letters of admiration.
That is so true. That's true.
So people are attracted to crazy.
They
And
are.
that also gives hope to those of you who are out there that are nuts. Because yeah.
And not only that, let me say this, because you're saying they're attracted to crazy, but the flip side to that is they're attracted to people in like situations. There could
Yeah.
be some people who are in Munchausen by proxy situations. So they're like, hey, she knows what I'm going through. I'm going to write her.
And this is a conversation that we often have. So it's really funny because in career development, especially leadership development specifically, we are always telling the leaders that relationship building is the foundation. And a key way to that, right, is to be able to share your experiences.
Absolutely.
And the one thing that we see in this aspect is it's that being able to relate from having the common experiences. Now, this is extremely negative,
It
this
is.
particular example. However, if it worked this well in a negative case, just imagine what that looks like in the workplace when you take a moment to take a step back and to attempt to make that connection by sharing that you understand that you've been in this situation or someone has been in a situation like this, and to help people process through what it is that they should do next.
Absolutely. That is a really good point. And I like that point. And it's a perfect segue because I would want to tell the viewers that not only are you a guest on my podcast today, you have your own podcast. So, can you tell us a little bit about that podcast?
So I can. The Let's Chat with Ask Cat series started a couple of years ago as an actual radio show on Fluent Radio. So Fluent Radio is a Black owned and operated internet radio station.
Okay.
And never wanted to be on the radio. Most of the things I've done in my life, I never wanted to do, but for whatever reason,
Get in line.
like
Okay.
I had done some interviews, like I'd stay as a guest, yada, yada, yada. And they finally kind of wore me down to say, like, this would be like really cool for you to do a talk show. So I did the talk show for 2 seasons. And then I do special shows that are geared towards, maybe events that my not-for-profit will host, that are virtual events. And then just recently, or we're getting ready to air a special leadership series. So once I came off the radio, I put all of those shows on a podcast, and then I'll, any radio podcast appearance that I do, I always add that to the podcast. And then
Absolutely.
any special events, right?
Yeah.
I'll add. So on the 22nd, a 3-part series is going to go live.
The 22nd of January?
On the 22nd of January, yes.
2024.
2024. It was originally supposed to be 10-15-minute segments that talked about the commonalities between relationships and the workforce. And we were going to have a guest, for each of the segments, and we were going to try to keep that thing concise and crisp to 15 minutes. But after more conversation with my 2 special guest hosts, Nikita Nicole and Dr. Shaniqua Jones, we ended up deciding to make it 3 45-minute segments across 3 particular topics. So that's the commonalities between parenting and leadership, the commonalities between business and disenfranchised communities and what that looks like.
Okay.
And then, of course, the other was just what our individual thoughts are on what quality leadership is.
What quality leadership?
Hmm.
Oh, that had to be a good one.
We had a good time. That was in total, it ended up being about 2 hours and 15 minutes, something along those lines.
Okay.
And it was a good conversation. I am really excited about it airing. So it's already set up for the video to air via YouTube, and then I might have snuck and linked the audio on my podcast, so it might already be up on the CHBM Services website.
So where can people find it? Where can they listen? Where can they see it?
So the easiest way to get connected, stay connected to everything that I do across the 501c3 and CHBM Services is via my Linktree. So it's literally Linktree /CHBM Services, or you can go to chbmservices.com and hit the drop down and you can subscribe to the podcast that way.
Nice. So when I in my podcast, the episode, I always like to give the listeners a takeaway. So we just did the Gypsy Rose case. What do you think would be a really good takeaway for today?
Ooh, there's so many thoughts.
You could give more than one.
So many thoughts. So, in transparency, because of the fact that we focus on holistic career development, right? Meaning that literally we understand that your personal shows up in your professional. You can't separate the two. It is a reality. So if Gypsy Rose were to be in the workspace, there would be a lot of telltales about her traumas and her triggers that would impact the way that she did her work.
Okay.
And I say that to say, as we are navigating this thing called careers, entrepreneurship, whatever our things are on how we generate revenue, I want us to think heavily about our traumas and our triggers. We have to challenge ourselves to own and heal from those things that have pre-existed and those things that are currently taking place in our lives. The workplace is going to be the workplace, and yes, the workplace has its own responsibilities.
Right.
However, as individuals, we have to remain accountable in all situations. So in situations that we have control over, once we have identified that these traumas and these triggers exist, it is on us to do what it is that we need to do to be able to get the help that we need so that we can start the healing process that we need, so that we can show up authentically and be our best selves at all times, everywhere that we are. It is no longer acceptable to say that's just how I am. It is no longer acceptable for others to have to amend their behaviors to you because you're a ticking time bomb.
Yes.
We have to do the work, and we have to own our areas of opportunity as well as our strengths. And if Gypsy goes, or when Gypsy goes into the workplace, she has to do that, just that. She needs to be on a healing journey. She needs to be in therapy. She needs to be consciously owning and acknowledging, so that she can be great. And as she's growing in her relationship and potentially starting a family, she owes that to herself and them as well, to be her best self.
I like that. My takeaway from this would be to speak up. I know that she could not.
Yep.
And I know that she couldn't. And I'm not speaking to her, but I am speaking to others. You might feel that you're alone. You might feel trapped. You might feel like it's no way out, but you have to find someone. It could be a stranger, because I've seen that happen before, where strangers have helped people get out of situations. You got to talk to someone so that you don't end up like Gypsy Rose in prison for 10 years because you killed somebody. You want to still be able to be out in the world enjoying yourself, and that person being in prison for what they did to you. So as difficult as it may seem, as alone as you may be, you might not have a place to go. You might not have a penny to your name, but it's important that we do not keep it inside, that we don't suffer in silence. It's important that we speak up and speak out about what's going on with us. If we are uncomfortable, if we feel uneasy, if we feel like it's not right. We have to speak up, man, woman. We have to speak up and we have to speak out so that our voice can be heard, because it won't change if people don't know what's going on with us. And so many things escalate because we don't nip them in the bud early. So that would be my takeaway for today.
And that definitely goes back to that ownership piece.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
like now we can't beat ourselves up for what we don't know, right? If we
Yes.
don't know any better, we don't know any better. But once
Yes.
that awareness raise takes place, then that's a different conversation. And contrary to popular belief, there is someone that is willing to help and or
Yes.
through a situation similar that will share and help point you in the right direction of resources to help you get to your next.
Exactly. And like I said, it could even be a stranger because,
Yeah.
we feel like, oh, my mom's not going to believe me. Oh, my dad's not going to believe me. And that's okay. They might. You might be right about that. But it could be that store clerk. It could be the gas station attendant. They're going to believe you. Flip them a note. Whatever you got to do, mouth the words help. They're going to try. You just never know where your help is going to come from. So that's why I'm saying speak out anytime that you can. Try. That's like the underlying thing. Try. That's my favorite word. I tell my son that all the time. I'll be like, you ain't gotta do much for me. Just try. You go to school, just try. And that's my thing. I tell him all the time. So Catherine, I want to say thank you so very much for coming on the podcast today. Criminal Justice Corner. You were like an amazing guest. I knew you would be, though. That's why I asked you to come on. And thank you. I'll see you guys next time on Criminal Justice Corner. Please like, subscribe, and share. Tell a friend about Criminal Justice Corner, and we'll see you next time.